As I was mentioning, I brought today some perceptual exercises, and I think you'll find them at the very least fun and challenging or interesting. And they do relate to where we left off last month, which was talking about what is the main obstacle to clarity. And what I said, and what I'll say now, is that essentially this main obstacle is taking things to be real, which are not fundamentally real. So that can appear in a number of different ways according to the path and knowledge that it appears as conceptualism, taking concepts to be real instead of looking to the reality itself. In the path of devotion, it arises as idolatry. In the path of compassion or action, it arises as hypocrisy. And in the path of skill, it arises as egotism, which is taking the individual ego self to be the source of one's actions, one's thoughts, and the receptacle of one's abilities and one's knowledge. So this being the primary obstacle, instead of just talking about this, I have these perceptual exercises that will hopefully kind of get at what is it that I'm really talking about, because a lot of you maybe have heard me talk about views and that views are somehow an obstacle to clarity. And so I'm hoping that these exercises will give some insight into what I mean by a view, and we'll attempt to observe and manipulate different views. So this all started with a chat I had with Dennis and a stereoscopic photograph that he sent me. So we'll start with that. And let me pull that up and share it on screen with you guys. So let's see. Share screen. Share. Can everybody see this picture?
Yes.
Okay. If it's not, hopefully it fills your screen and you can see you have a pretty good view of it. This is a postcard of the Hotel Regina in Paris. And what it is a stereoscopic image. And in the old days, they had little machines that you could drop these in. And when you looked through the machine, what you would see was like a three-dimensional picture. And now you can actually see that three-dimensional picture without the machine, but it requires a kind of perceptual shift. So some people can do this really easily, and some people have a hard time with it. I gotta say, this one I actually have a hard time with, but I can kind of get it to appear. So what I want you to try to do is, instead of focusing on the picture or one or the other picture, it's like try to gaze through the whole image, both pictures really, as if you're looking off into the distance. And if you do it right, a third image will appear in the middle of your screen, and that image will be the three-dimensional view. So I'll give you a moment to give it a try. Again, try to relax your eyes and stare through the image as if you're looking off into the distance. And then just play around with where your focal point is to see if you can get this third image to appear. Can anyone see it?
I do.
Do you?
Oh yeah.
Anyone else?
That's crazy. Yeah.
You saw it, Kim?
I got it pretty quick. Yeah. As soon as you said to like look at the look in the distance instead of at the photo, it kind
Yeah,
of went,
yeah.
that's crazy.
You might like sometimes what happens to me is I see the third image, but it's only this wide,
Yeah,
It's
there's like
like
a section in the middle sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
and then I have to kind of play with my eyes to get it to widen out to the full image.
It's a little bit like looking at those like hidden 3D pictures where it's just like a bunch of pixels and spots of color, but if you look at it right, boom, there's like a jumping dolphin and it's 3D.
That's right. Yeah,
That's really cool.
same kind of perceptual shift. Um, so so this is there's so many things like this that I think by analogy are relevant to what people are seeking with regards to um, seeing a different world. I think it was Nisargadatta Maharaj. He said that the next world is this world seen rightly. So it's like you're and I like as I said, you're looking right at it. It's not a matter of seeing something else. It's a matter of seeing differently. And David, I can see he's struggling to see it. Yeah. Dennis, do you have any advice on this that I haven't given as to how to do it?
Um, so when you're staring at this image, you have to relax your eyesight. And as you relax your eyesight staring into the images, you'll start to see them collide.
Hmm.
Continue to let those collide. And that center image, when you sometimes when you least expect it, when you're focused on that center image, you'll suddenly see it become 3D. But it's a matter of relaxing your vision, but paying attention to your eyes being lazy and the images colliding.
Yeah. I can just get like a little one. It's like a little window that
When you
starts
get
to
it,
open up
the
and
good
then
thing
it
about
slams
this,
shut.
yeah, the good thing about this is when you get it, you'll be like, oh, this is so easy. And Matt and I were talking about enlightenment being just like that too. When
Yeah,
you become enlightened, you're like, wow, this
it's
was never needed to be so difficult.
yeah, there's many accounts like that. And my experience was just like that, where you think, it's so obvious. How could I have missed this? Um, so anyway, this is just an introduction to the topic and stereoscopic photographs. You can find them online and whatnot and try it more. But I have some other
So,
exercise that will build on this.
where did you get this picture?
This was uh actually Dennis took this picture. It's his postcard. So I can send it to the group after the meeting.
No, it's cool though. It really illustrates it. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's another. This one's more of an illustration. There's not really a perceptual game in this one, but it's a very interesting illustration that starts to get at least what I am talking about in terms of a view and how you can imagine that maybe what's known as like the two truths doctrine in Buddhism, where you have relative truth and absolute truth. And so you can see how here you have two different views. The view on the right is a circle, the view on the left is a square. And they seem different, and yet they're both true. And in the middle, you can see where the mistake has taken place, right? Um, because when you see the actual object that is projecting the images, you see, oh, it's actually a cylinder. And then everything else makes sense. So each, in this, again, it's an analogy, but in this illustration, the circle and the square are a view. And you may think that view is real, but there's a deeper reality. Also explains a lot of conflict that happens in the world, in terms of views. Here's a classic, the old cup and two faces. This one is very interesting, I think, because it demonstrates really well how the mind seeks to lock onto a view, a particular view, and what happens when it's presented with competing views. So in this one, you can see the mind will sort of lock on to either a cup or two faces, but they're so well balanced, you may actually see your mind like sort of flipping to one, to the other, to one, to the other. And it's very difficult to just see the image as it is without the mind seeking out one view or the other view. So as a practice, the idea here is just to look at the image and observe your own mind and what it does when it's presented with this sort of competing views.
It's like an eternal, unfulfilled attempt to kiss.
Do you mean your mind is?
Well, maybe that too. I just
Yeah.
feel bad for those two people.
Yeah, that's interesting.
This one makes me feel like I have a blinker going on. It blinks cup, blinks faces, blink, 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 blink.
Yes, it's so balanced between the two images that that's also what I see. The mind wants to just flips back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. There are other ones like this that are classics, like the old duck rabbit one. I think that the mind tends to really lock on to one image or the other, and you have a hard time seeing the other one. But this one is very balanced, and so it puts the mind in a kind of cognitive dissonance. It doesn't know what it can't lock on to either one view or the other without the other intruding. So it's very interesting for that reason. As a challenge, try to see the image as not a picture. See if you can see the image as just a shape. It's extremely difficult. Without the mind wanting to lock on to either the negative image or the positive image. See? So, what I would say is, look, this is what the mind is constantly doing. It's trying to lock on to a view, whether it's an image, an idea, a concept, and so on. It's always seeking to identify images and arrange them and fix them into a conceptual view or an understandable view. Here's another one. These are what I would describe as kind of impossible objects. And the interesting thing about these ones is they look fine when you first look at them. You're like, oh yeah, it's just a three-dimensional triangle. But if you start to investigate how is this object put together, and you start to trace the triangle, it doesn't add up. And so what's going on here is there are two views subtly combined, and the mind will lock on to one or the other view and say, oh, it's fine, right? But if you start to follow it around, the mind says, wait, something's wrong. It's not fine. So I think the bottom one is easy to see how this is happening, because if you cover the right side of the shape, it's clear that there are three cylindrical tongs, right? Oh yeah, there's three cylindrical tongs. And if you cover the left side of the shape, you're like, oh yeah, there's two square tongs. And when you take the hand away, the mind, sort of sees just a strange shape. And it may lock on to one or the other, or you may just see it as, there's something wrong with that shape. And in the top one, the melding of the two views has to do with how the three dimensions are presented in two-dimensional space. So this is kind of like a lot of Escher drawings, each corner looks fine when you look at it in isolation. Yes, yes, yes. Each corner looks fine. But when you trace with your eye around, it's clear something's not right. The third dimension isn't being represented as we would normally understand it. Here's another impossible shape. This works kind of the same way. At first, you think you're seeing a three-dimensional cube, but then you say, what's going on with this line here? And suddenly it doesn't look right. So if you cover up that intersection, I don't know if you can see my cursor, this middle intersection, if you cover that up, you will see a three-dimensional cube, no problem. But when that line is there, again, it's like the triangle one, the three dimensions aren't represented the way that we would expect them to be according to our view. And so you get this kind of impossible shape. And the mind will again try to lock on to one view or the other view, according to how it understands the three-dimensional space. Now this one's gonna get interesting. So the next kind of ones that I have, these are what you're seeing is an image that produces motion within stillness. So it is not a video, it's a two-dimensional static image. But for me, what you see first is you'll see a ball in the foreground, and the background will appear to be flowing downward. Does everyone see that? So that being the case, you have kind of the two views. You have both stillness and motion, and you have a foreground, the ball, and the background, the sheet, So you could try, one of the things that you can try to do is to change it around. Can you get the background to be still? And so what I recommend is looking at the bottom two center dots on the background and see if you can freeze the background in place and see if what happens to the ball.
This one totally trips me out.
It's going to get trippier. So
what I saw right away was the ball moving, and I'm like,
oh, okay.
Yeah, that's all I still see, really. I don't see the background moving, but it blows my mind that that's happening.
That's interesting because I just want to see, does everybody see something moving? Yeah.
I only see it perfectly still.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so different different results for different people. So whatever you see, like for example, if you see the ball moving, try to fix the ball in place and see if the background starts to move. And if you see the background moving, try to fix the background in place and see if you see the ball moving. And if you can see both of those, try to flip back and forth. And then maybe give your eyes a rest. Now, if you could see either of those or both of those, next I want you to try to freeze the whole image, nothing moving. Now, the way you might try to do this again is to relax your eyes a bit, and instead of focusing on a particular spot on the image, try to see the whole image at once. And that way you can get it to freeze, at least for a moment. If you do get it to freeze, you might start to see some other weird things like sort of flowing or oozing type of motions or pulsing motions, like it's breathing or something. Good. Could you get it to the whole image to stop if you hadn't already seen it stopped? Great.
I saw a blue ring around the ball when
Oh,
it
interesting.
became a dark blue ring around it.
That
I
is
got individual circles in the sphere starting to like move around independently. This is really cool.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's I think what they start to ooze or move. Yeah,
Yeah, there was like the image was melting and then just like a circle or two just kind of that's crazy.
yeah, yeah. This one's pretty interesting. Um,
Matthew, you're
yeah,
taking us on an acid trip.
yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
God, it's all right.
Yeah, it's about to get trippier. Okay, so this one, what you may see is a bunch of sort of concentric sections with each one rotating in a different direction. If you just look at the center dot, you will see the various concentric rings rotating in a different direction. Now, the first thing, does everyone see that? Okay. So the first thing I want you to play with is try to freeze one of the rings and then see what it does to the other rings. And you can freeze them by changing your focal point onto that ring. And what one of the things I experience is you change the focal point and the rings, the various rings start to stop and start. Different ones might stop, other ones start. Um, I think it's easiest to do it with these outer two rings. If you If you freeze the outer ring, the next ring in starts to move. And if you freeze that ring, the outer ring starts to move. Everyone been able to see that? Okay, so the next one is, again, relax the eyes, see the whole square image all at once, and try to stop all the rings from moving. This one's really trippy, I think. What did you see? I'm curious because this one gets pretty mind-bending if you stop all the rings.
This is Dave, and I'm getting like a shadow spiral that comes kind of one direction from the center and takes up the space and then kind of recontracts, kind of in the background.
Interesting.
I don't know if anyone else getting that image.
Anybody else? This one I find the most tiring on my eyes of all these, so.
And I stop it. There's a pulse that radiates off from the center.
You're breaking up a little there.
So, when I stop it, there's a pulse that radiates off from the center. Radiates off.
Alan, your connection is a little broken up, but I think you said something about pulsing.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, instead of going this way or this way, you start to see a third dimension that pulses both out and in at the same time. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah. So that one's interesting. This one is very interesting, I think. It seems to make it very difficult to focus on any particular spot in the image. And that effect becomes more true the closer you go to the center of the image. So if you look on the very outside edge of the image, you can just focus in on that and you're like, oh yeah, there's like a blue circle thing and it feels static and fine. But if you look, say, in the green area, you start to feel this pull towards the center. And if you look in the orange area, this pull starts to get even stronger and your eyes start to want to go to the void in the center of the image. So that's the first kind of interesting effect to observe in yourself. Just look on the outside edge, in the middle, and then maybe right off the void, and to see if there's any feeling of being drawn toward that void in the center.
The whole thing feels like it's pulsating to me.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time believing that this is like a stationary picture. It still feels that way. The whole thing, it feels like there's a electronic mechanism pulsating in the heart of this.
Yeah, and the closer you go to the middle, like now just look right into the void And then you will start to see pulsations and also spirals coming off of that
Yeah,
darkness in the center.
totally.
So now what I'd like you to do is, looking into the void, try to get the sense of the void getting smaller and bigger. See how you can manipulate the perception of that void so it gets smaller. You can use your breath even as you exhale, push the void away from you. And as you inhale, pull it towards you.
The colors are changing as I do that. This one is awesome.
I have unfocused my eyes and the center disappears.
Yes.
And then I see two centers, two eyes looking at me.
Yes. So that is one of the effects that you may be able to see, that that dark void in the center can completely disappear.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't been able to do it myself, but I'm pretty sure there is also a way to have that center blackness just take over the whole visual field as well, so that the colorful pattern disappears and all you see is void. So if anybody sees that, let me know. But the first, just try to make it bigger and smaller. And if you make it smaller and smaller and smaller, you may get what Bruce described, is that the dark spot in the middle will vanish entirely.
The other thing I'm playing with is opening my eyes really wide and then also then squinting. And just the mechanism of the eyeball plays great games with this particular one.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a good kind of meditation one. You could sit in front of this and meditate. I used to sit and meditate when I was in my 20s in front of an old television set, set to static. So it was just which is basically just random noise on the screen, the snow screen, And then I would practice envisioning shapes within the random noise, triangles, circles, all kinds of different shapes. You could start, and you could see them in there. It's very interesting. So these are kind of manipulation kinds of practice. You're manipulating perception. So here's another example. This is my understanding, a Tibetan mandala. And if you look at this image, you will see that it exhibits many of these same types of effects, i.e. motion within stillness and 3 dimensions from 2 dimensions.
This one's really cool. It does a lot.
Yeah.
Are we looking down into a pit? Or are we looking at the top of a roof of a pyramid?
Right. So that's the one of the dimensional shifts that can happen, both inward and outward. You may also see like pulsations that pulse outward and pulsations that go inward. So, you could sit and meditate looking at this also, and you could see, part of what this is doing is destabilizing the normal view that you hold, at least for visual perception. And, here we're just looking at this for a few minutes. That sit in front of something like this for a half an hour. Another traditional example. One of the interesting things about this one I find is that if you examine the triangles, it may start to look like some of them aren't right. Like the bottom ones are slightly askew to the side, whereas the top ones are equilateral. But I think actually they're all mirrored. Or no, they're slightly offset. I take it back. So there is asymmetry between top and bottom. This image, I think, is quite beautiful with the gold.
What culture is that from?
I just did a search on Google for Tibetan mandala. So if this is Tibetan, according to the search, that's what I would say. But
Okay.
I can't say for sure, of course. This central image, I think, is a kind of fractal. Okay, so let's see, before we get to, what's this next? Oh yeah, this is the Mobius strip. So before we get to this, the Mobius strip and why I have it in here, if it's not obvious, I want you to try one more of these perceptual shifts, but without any image whatsoever. So disregarding the image on your screen, the exercise here is to sit upright and turn your head slowly from right to left. And the normal view, of course, is that your head is turning while the world remains still. But I want you to see if you can shift your perception such that it seems as if your head is still while the world is rotating around it. If you go very slow, it might help. This is a relative motion exercise. It's kind of like when you're in the car, you know how sometimes you're in the car and it looks like another car is going backwards or something like that. You can do this when walking too. So when you walk, try to walk in such a way that it feels like you're stationary, as if you were on a treadmill and the world was moving past you. Now you might say, it's difficult to do because I can feel my neck muscles turning my head. So that indicates that my head is moving. But that take that sensation of the neck muscles and apply it instead to the world, so that the sensation of the neck muscles is actually what turns the world, the image of the world. Did anybody get a sense of it?
Yeah. And Matthew, at this, can you share 2 sentences around why we would do this?
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. I
Yeah.
can make up some ideas. I just like to hear from you.
Right. Well, let me try to, do 2 sentences, like you said, to see if I can sum it up. Part of what inhibits us from seeing clearly is our own conditioned view, our own conditioned views. And these exercises are practice at manipulating conditioned views. If you can see the other view. Now, normally what happens is people think their view is correct. And when they see the other view, they say, oh, that's interesting, but that's incorrect. And they assume their own view is correct. But if you do these kinds of exercises enough, again, like what I was saying earlier, it starts to destabilize the conditioned view. You can see things one way or the other. Just as for example, in the cup and face example, see, it was so easy to see either. And so they seemed equally valid. But this one, the motion one, doesn't seem equally valid to most people. They think my view is correct, the other view is incorrect. And so these exercises are to help you, that if you can see the other view clearly and really experience the world that way, you start to question your own conditioned view. See, is my view correct? And so the purpose of these exercises really is to help to destabilize the conditioned view. It starts to open the mind to be able to see without the mind snapping and locking onto a view, whether it's one image or another image, one way of seeing things, another way of seeing things, foreground and background, or desire and aversion. See, when you see an object, the mind tries to lock on to desire or aversion. Do I want it, or do I want it to get the hell away from me? You know? So those are views. Also, am I inside my body or outside my body? Is my mind in my head or is my mind everywhere? So this is part of the reason why I've put the Mobius strip here, because I think it illustrates why these exercises are relevant. The idea with the Mobius strip is if you place yourself anywhere on the strip, like here or there, just pick a spot and say, okay, I'm there. The view that we usually have is that we are on one side of the strip and the world is on the other side of the strip. See, we are inside and the world is outside. And just draw a line across the strip wherever it is that you placed yourself. And that's, you could say that's the ego. And it keeps you fixed in that view on that particular place of the strip. You're not allowed to go anywhere else. You're just there. And you see, I'm on this side and the world is on that side. But if you remove that line, that roadblock, and you start to trace with your eyes where the self is around the Mobius strip, it runs seamlessly into the world. And what you thought was the world runs seamlessly into the self. And this is what, if you've read my book, I call total perception. See, mind sees world, world is mind. And there's no real dividing spot. There's no place for this perception to stop. It's continuous. What is being perceived is what is perceiving. And it's only by stopping somewhere, fixing the mind on one particular spot, that the conditioned view that there is a separation between inside and outside can come about. And it's by holding us fixed in that view that we don't recognize our oneness with everything. And we see ourselves as separate and apart. And because we see ourselves as separate and apart, we suffer. This is a Klein bottle. It's kind of a four-dimensional version of a Mobius strip. In the Mobius strip, at least in the pictured version, you can actually make a Mobius strip, right, with a piece of paper. Has everyone done this? Where you just take a strip of paper, you put one twist in it, and then connect the ends, and you have a Mobius strip. It's in 3 dimensions. You can picture it in 2 dimensions, just like it's done in the image here. Now, a Klein bottle is a shape actually that can only exist in 4 dimensions. So you can't actually really make a physical one in our 3 dimensions, but you can picture it in 3 dimensions like this, essentially. So this is like 2 dimensions represented as 3 dimensions, actually representing a 4-dimensional object. But the idea here, again, just like the Mobius strip, the reason the Klein bottle is interesting is because it evokes the concept of inside and outside. So imagine that you are inside the bottle, on the inside surface of the bottle, and you're looking out the glass to the outside of the bottle. You say, okay, I'm in here and the world is out there. But if you start to trace the surface of the bottle's interior and you follow it wherever it goes, without reaching any edge, you will find yourself on the outside of the bottle. And if you keep going in the same direction, you will once again, without ever reaching an edge, find yourself back inside the bottle. So there's only one surface, just like the Mobius strip. There's not really an inside or outside. That, for example, you are on the inside and the world is on the outside. That is a perceptual, conceptual view. But if you trace, you see, it's all one image. It's all one surface. And so, in a way, this is what the job of inquiry is to do, is to trace, see, to see where is my mind? To trace the surface of the mind wherever it goes and see what you find. That's all the images. Does anybody have any questions? I guess we're almost to the end of our time, but maybe we can take a couple questions. Or just comments.
That was fun, Matthew. It was interesting, and I think it was a a good visual representation of a lot of what you talk about. No inside or outside, or both inside and outside, and so thank you.
Yeah, it's just an analogy, but I think it's very relevant. There's actually many things like this in our day-to-day life that actually speak directly to the spiritual journey. You know, like lots of sayings, like I was thinking, everybody's probably heard the saying, all is one. We've heard it so often, it sounds trite, but you know what? That speaks straight to the truth. The other thing about this that's interesting is it also speaks to that kind of paradox of practice that Larry was talking about at the beginning. So whenever we do willfully a practice like meditation, for example, we're trying to manipulate what is going on. We're trying to manipulate our perception in some way. We think we're going to get a result, or we think there's something to find. We think by doing this, we will achieve something or see something. And in that way, all practice has this kind of manipulative aspect to it. And where you're trying to see things a different way, or manipulate the mind, or train the mind, and so on and so forth. And like I said at the beginning, it's not really functioning generally the way we think it is. But it is, it can have an effect in helping us to remove obstacles, to relax the mind, to see through our conditioned views, and to break them down, and to see that our conditioned view actually goes much deeper than what we thought. It wasn't just am I a Buddhist or a Christian? It is, am I moving, or is the world moving? Is my mind inside or outside? The conditioned view goes quite deep, much deeper than we imagine until we really start to investigate it. And so these practices are kind of manipulation practices for the mind. And it's something actually I think you don't see a whole lot in practice that's presented in the America or in the West and so on. The manipulation type practices, you just don't see people talking about them, whether it's visualization practice or this kind of visual manipulation practice. so on. So I find them quite interesting. And like I said, it was a part of my path too, in terms of doing visualizations, staring into an old television. Yeah.
You know, it's all really practical too, relative to things like relationships, you know. I mean, most relationship conflicts that get ugly are I'm right and you're wrong. You know, my view is right
Yeah.
and your view is wrong. And
Yes.
these are just very helpful reality checks on
Exactly, exactly. That's the thing. It's like this is just like a little game, but look, you can apply this to your argument with your friend or to see, can I see how they see? Can I see a different view than my view? And also to realize that your view is just a view. And is, the same again to do this with one's own image of oneself and one's own image of the world, to apply this same kind of practice. Can I see it the other way? Can I see the self as no self? Can I see the world as no world?
It's easier with my eyes closed.
Everyone's gonna you also see in this practice, see, everyone had kind of a different experience, right? I saw this, and so on. You see how the journey unfolds. That's by analogy, how the journey unfolds differently for different people, because they have a different view, a different conditioning, a different body, a different mind, a different eyes.
I was going to say that I really appreciated this this teaching to kind of dive into sensation, and maybe I'm just going to label like simplicity versus, for me, is complexity with a lot of words. Sometimes feels like a lot of complexity and kind of intellectual kind of energy. And maybe sometimes I don't feel completely confident, or something about having a lot of words, and it takes me into kind of a more of a figuring out.
Yes.
And then I create a view that this non-dual, however you want to label it, path is about intellectualizing.
Right.
And I have that view, and so then something like that, like this, really helps to balance that out. And maybe in some ways it's kind of one of these both ands.
Yeah.
And then I also want to, say what David said at the beginning about the devotion. I'm going to lump into that kind of simplicity, non-intellectual kind of approach, but it's everything.
All is one.
Yeah, you can't figure it all out. So I just wanted to share that. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, and very insightful comment. It is not about an intellectual view. Some teachers teach that way. I had a conversation with Bruce earlier this week. I have a little bit of an intellectual kind of streak into my mind, so sometimes I teach that way. But it is not an intellectual view. Nothing I say is to try to convince you or teach to you a particular view or a particular concept or arrangement of concepts. It's to help you see what I see. That's it. It's just to see. It's to help others see for themselves what it is that I'm trying to talk about, but that can't really be talked about. It can only really be seen yourself. You have to you just see yourself for yourself. You can't. This is, by the way, this is another obstacle that people have. they look at the great mystics of the past, Ramana Maharshi and so on, and they think, how do I see that person's view? Well, that person sees no view. So what so what you need to do is not see that person's view, but to remove your own view and then see what's there.
So Matthew, one of the best teachings I've heard from you is to keep looking until you find nothing. And could you just, that was so helpful to me. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's impossible to say more than that, really, see, because this is exactly what I've just been saying, that nothing can only be seen for oneself. I can't describe it. I can't say what it is because it's nothing. Now, there's little hints like, I don't mean it's nothing. I mean it's not a thing. In other words, or another way of putting it is, it's not a view. When the mind locks on to something, it creates a view or it creates a thing. Oh, it's a cup. Oh, it's two faces. Oh, it's inside. Oh, it's outside. The mind creates views. And so whatever it is that you perceive isn't what I'm talking about. When you look outward, whatever you perceive isn't what I'm talking about. And when you look inward, whatever you perceive isn't what I'm talking about. It's not a thing at all. If you perceive something, that's not it. And so keep looking, and so you can discard it. See, just like in the meditation at the beginning, that noting, part of that practice of noting, like that's a thought, that's a sensation, that's a feeling, that's an emotion. Part of the function of that noting practice is to be able to set it aside. That's not it. That's not relevant. That's not what I'm looking for. That's just a thought. That's just an emotion. That's just an object. So you have to keep looking like that until you exhaust all the things that you think that it might be. And then nothing appears, you remember when we talked about looking between the thoughts? That's another hint of where to look. It's not this thought. It's not that thought. When one thought subsides and before the next thought arises, between there, you might catch a glimpse of nothing. Now, ultimately, this nothing is there all the time, whether things are there or not. But in practice, it's easiest to catch a glimpse of it between the gaps.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, everyone. We're past our time. Let's just carry this into our lives and, spread whatever benefit we have developed or created from this gathering. Let's share it and release it into the world.
Thank you, Bruce. And
bless everyone.
Bless you all. And let me just add, because it just came to my mind, when I'm talking about the gap between thoughts, think about the exercise that we did with the face and the cup, how you saw the mind go back and forth, back and forth. So there's a gap between the mind being locked on one view and the mind being locked on the other view. Look what's between those two views. That's the idea. Thank you all for coming and doing having fun with these games. I hope you continue to, play with these things. If you look online for optical illusions, you will see, and you can play with these kind of same principles with different images and things, or try meditating with one of a mandala or something like that. Until next time, peace to you all.
See you
Thank
all in
you.
a month.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Yes, thanks everyone.